Well, hello, good morning. Thank you all for coming, even though yesterday was the party. I know it's hard. Well, first of all, I'm Adrian Cuevas. I'm one of the developers from Nomada Studio. And as you probably know, I'm going to explain a bit about how we created GRIS. So for people that don't know what is GRIS, I'm going to start just showing you the trailer of the game. GRIS is a 2D platformer, what it could be like in the old days, a Mario. But as you can see, we focus a lot on art, music, so we try to empower other things, not that common in video games. So first I would like to introduce you a bit to our team, to the core team of the studio. This is me, I'm Adrian. I haven't been working always in video games. I started for a biomechanical company as a software engineer in Barcelona. But then I decided just to do the jump to the game industry. So I went to England, I started working for Buzz, the music quiz game, maybe you know it. And from then I started doing more like AAA games, Far Cry 3 in Montreal, Hitman here in Copenhagen, Rainbow Six. And after all these games, I wanted to do something different. And I have this friend, Roger Mendoza. He studied with me in Barcelona, the degree. He also has been working in AAA for quite a long time, in Montreal particularly. He has been in Assassin's Creed, for many branches of Assassin's Creed, Rainbow Six as well. And we had the lucky to meet Conrad Rosette. He's a well-known artist in Barcelona. He is a plastic artist. He does exhibitions, etc. But he started doing design for T-shirts for Zara. And after a few years there, he decided that he could do his own thing. And he became pretty famous in Spain, particularly because of his exhibition of muses, is these women's. And after that, he always thought he wanted to do video games. And for me, I had to go to Montreal. I was working in Barcelona, and I had to go to Montreal for 4 or 5 months to work in Rainbow Six. So I was doing like a celebration, a farewell party. And luckily for us, a lot of the adventures nowadays, GRIS started in a bar. So I was celebrating this farewell party, and just by luck, we met with a friend that I was celebrating her birthday party. So we joined Paris, and among the guests to this birthday party was Conrad. So Conrad started talking to us like, oh, I really want to make a video game. I've never done a video game, so I'm looking for people to help me with. And he drew this. This is the first picture I've ever saw of GRIS. This is how it all started. And the original idea for Conrad was mostly just making a game that it started in black and white, that it will be very handcrafted. And one of the core mechanics will be unlocking colors. So from there, we start talking about it. But to be completely honest, I left for Montreal the day after. So I went and I thought, this is going to be nonsense. I mean, we are 3 drunk people drinking in a bar. It's nowhere. It's going nowhere. But luckily for me, Roger and Conrad kept talking. And after I came back from Montreal, they already work in a very small, bear with me because it's the very first thing we did, to show a bit the concept of what GRIS could be in the way of how we could show feelings. So let's see this. can see, it was a very, very rough pass, 2-frame animations. It was very simple, but we knew that this can be a type of game we would like to do and that it could have some potential. So we start putting together a team to create a prototype. And luckily for us, we were able to meet with a lot of people in a conference and meeting a lot of publishers. And among them was Devolver Digital. Even though when we did the meeting, to be honest, we didn't know if it was going to work, because I don't know if you know Devolver Digital, but it's not used to publish our kind of games. They are more used to things like this, which is not exactly GRIS, and even more weird things like this. So we thought, maybe it's not the perfect publisher for us, but actually it is. They are a great publisher. They help us a lot from the very beginning, and they supporting us a lot. And so yeah, after that, we have been working for like a couple of years of full production. And finally, we were able to make it. And the funny thing is that our studio, this is most of the people that participate in the game, we were almost 80% of the people in the studio never work in video games, which has a lot of good things. Obviously, there's some things that are not that great. But most of it is great, because there was a lot of fresh ideas. People, especially artists, they didn't have any constraint about what they could do and what they couldn't do. For us, the developers, the programmers, we tried to give them as much freedom as we could. We know, for example, that they are used to use tools like Photoshop and stuff like that. So we try to mimic whatever they have in Photoshop, but in real time. So that's how we created GRIS, to have this artistic power. So in general, today I will show you a bit about the different aspects of GRIS, like the narrative, the art, the animation, design, and music. And I'm going to start with the narrative. So as you can imagine, GRIS is a very simple story, but we did that on purpose. We wanted to have a lot of power in the symbolism, but we wanted to leave a lot of room for the interpretation for the player. So we have our own story. We know for us exactly what happened there, what happened to the girl, but we never say it. We say we have some symbols in the game that you might understand it, but the best idea is if you can put your own story to it. Obviously, this is good in a way, because if you do it, you project your own story, you will feel much more attached to the game. But if you don't, you probably will see like a very plain and simple game. But luckily for us, most of the people have attached some of the story with it. So, like everybody, yesterday, for example, there was a lot of talks about the storytelling, and this is like our hero's journey. Here we map basically everything that happened in the game, like unlocking colors, what every representation of the stage was going to be. So this was our first approach to the game, to planning the whole game. But we use it particularly to control the pace of the game. So we knew what was going to happen, when we wanted the girl to feel a bit better, when it was going to be sad, these kind of things. No? For this, when we were developing this graph, we contacted with a psychologist and also a game designer that helped us a lot creating all the symbols in the game. And once we have all this, we start creating the map of the game. So for the map of the game, we wanted to do at the beginning more like a Metroidvania style of game. But when we started, we realized that it was going to be too resource costly. So we didn't have that many resources to build that world, because it's much harder to control when the player can go at any time, anywhere. So we had a small studio, we couldn't do that. And on top of that, we wanted to have more control of what was going to be the experience of the player. So we wanted to know exactly how long he has been dealing with that puzzle or with that level, so we know exactly the progression. So that's why we changed. And we went for this kind of mixed model. It's a mixed model between a Metroidvania and a linear experience, but it's mostly linear. So what we did is we did this map that is centered on a hub. So you will always be passing through this hub to show the progression of the world, and the idea is that the player will understand that the whole world is changing, even though we have just to recreate mostly this part. Also, every time that the player plays a portion of the map, they will always come back to the beginning of that map, so we see how it changed when you unlock a color. So we did this kind of a mixed experience. Here you can see the progression of the hub. So the first time the player arrives is basically black and white with the red. But then when the green appears, you see the trees, you see the plants. When you get the blue, you have water, you have the rain. And then you have the yellow, you have some lights. So that's how we saw it. This is the storyboard that we did. It's not so common in video games to make a storyboard. It depends a lot on the game, but it's very common in movies, for example. But for us, it was really, really important. We had to do this because basically we could see all the important events of the game, and we could see the color progression of the game. We could see how the game starts in black and white, and all the colors that it's gaining, and at the end you see the whole thing. And we had this pretty much after pre-production. So for the 2 years of production, we already had this. We already knew what was going to be the game. And it didn't change that much, luckily for us. Then the art. The art, as you know, probably is one of the most important things in our game. So we knew we had this kind of a different art style. And nowadays, when you are making a game and you are a small company, I think it's very important for you to know what are your strengths. We try to basically use our strengths or remove our weakness. So we wanted to go for a game with no UI, so we could show more our art. We wanted to go for an art style that is not so common in video games. It's very common probably for, in exhibitions or all kind of medias. And we also wanted to go for this kind of style because at the end of the day, it's a very common art style. It's something that probably a lot of people have seen, watercolors, stuff like that, but not in video games. So that helped us a lot to stand out of the crowd. The first few months of the pre-production, we were creating a lot of ideas. We had like 100 of these notebooks with a lot of pitches, different ideas, different art style, until we start getting focused on what the game was going to be. And then we start designing the main character. For the main character, obviously we have different kind of references, like any other kind of art form, but mostly it was fashion design. That was the most interesting reference we had. Back in those days, Conrad was checking magazines all day and web pages. And then we start creating our first approach to the character. So even though we like a lot, this is the first character we designed, and we like it a lot. I think it's beautiful, but it has some complications. So when you are developing a 2D game and it's a handcrafted frame-by-frame animation, like it's our game, this kind of design could have a lot of problems because, for example, you have a lot of information inside the dress. So when you do zoom outs, for example, and you see the small girl, all this will be like very blurry. You won't have the correct information, so it won't look nice on TV. And on top of that, when you have to do the animation, the more information you have here, the more you have to animate. So every frame, you will have to take care of where that eye is going, or every line, how it has to move. So all that, for a small company like us, was a pain in the ass. So we start simplifying the character. We wanted to go for a slightly more elegant, more minimalistic, but also more practical. So we end up going for this. This is basically the final form of GRIS. And as you can see, it doesn't even have sleeves. You have no information. That's much easier for us to animate. And also, when you do zoom out, you still have the important information. It's the same. It doesn't change. OK, for the rest of the game, some of the reference we have, maybe you recognize like Ghibli movies, Disney movies. But one of the most important ones was Moebius and their comic books. But one that probably a lot of people won't recognize, and I understand why, is Aquascaping. That's something that probably has to do a lot with Conrad, because he was in a dark phase of aquascaping himself. So he was doing his own aquarium. And he got into this culture of iwagumi. It's like a Japanese-style aquascaping. But the thing of this style is that they are very, very, very meticulous. So they pay a lot of attention to small things, like they put basically 1 branch, 2 branches, 3 rocks, and that's it. But they take a lot of time to know exactly where it's going to be. So we got into that, and as you can see, some of our compositions were based in this kind of aquascaping. So once we knew a bit the style of the game and of the girl, we started doing a lot of concepts. I think we end up having like probably 1,200 concepts of the game. But obviously, some of them didn't make it in the game. So this one, for example, you've never seen because it didn't happen. That's supposed to be a scene that it was inside a tree. But most of the concepts are pretty much exactly like they are in the game now. So for us developers, we try to basically represent exactly what they have in concept art in the game. So a lot of these scenes were concept art done like almost 3 years ago, 2.5 years, and they are pretty much the same nowadays in the game. So I will talk a bit about the animation. As you know, we did this frame-by-frame animation. And the first thing we wanted to know is how was going to be the running loop. The running loop is the most important loop in a platform game because you're going to see that 80% of the time. So we worked on that probably for a month, because that was going to be the one that defined the style of the rest of animation, because that's the most important one for us. So this was the first approach for the animation. As you can see, it's beautiful, but it was slightly, well, that kind of liquid movement was slightly too weird for us. So we went for a slightly more elegant, which was this one, but then it wasn't that magical. So we told the animator, OK, let's try to do something slightly more different. And then I think he had a stroke and went for this. But it's funny, it's funny. But finally, after a lot of iterations, we end up having this. This is the final running animation of GRIS. But as you can see, we still have the sleeve. So finally, we decided to remove that for basically pragmatical purposes. So this is the final and clean cycle of run. After we have this, we start doing other loops, like the heavy ability. This is how it is the rough animation. And then you can see how it is in the game. Then we start doing animations like longer animations, how a cinematic will be. So this is our rough pass of the animation. And this is how it looks in the game. Once we have the main character, we start talking about the antagonist of the game. And to be honest, at the beginning, we didn't know exactly what we wanted to do with the antagonist. And luckily for us, the animator showed us a video clip that really inspired us to create the antagonist. This is a part of it. So you see all these liquid animations. So we thought that that could be a perfect fit for us. Because as the rest of the game is watercolors, we thought maybe the antagonist could be this kind of Chinese black ink. So it would be like a perfect antagonist. And it could move like that. So when we start planning the animations for the boss, for the antagonist, first of all, we always were doing like a small, I forgot now. Well, like a small map, no, of the animation. And once we have it, we start working the first rough pass of the animation. So basically for this, we do just the keyframes. We was like a few keyframes of the animation. And once we had that, we could import it right away in Unity. We work with Unity. And with that, you could know exactly the size of the clips. You can know exactly where it's going to be placed, if it fits with the character. And if that was OK, then we start going to the animators and the artists to go for the next passes. So we was the cleanup with the line and all the in-between frames. Then we added the color and the final line, and then we added the textures. So we see how it looks in the game, yeah. Once we have that, we just add the rest of the effects and the shaders, and this is how the scene looks. The second part of the antagonist is that it changed shapes. So another of the important shapes we have, it was an eel that you might have seen. And the problem with this eel that is it has kind of a long body, even that you don't see the whole thing. And for us, it was hard to know exactly what we wanted to do, because if you do it in a frame-by-frame animation, you want to be able to control where the eel is going to go, and it's going to go for different shapes. So what we ended up doing was kind of a mix of 3D and 2D. This is pretty much the only 3D thing that we have in the game with water. We have also water. So what we went is we did the head with a 2D frame-by-frame animation. And then we used the idea of having just plain colors, so it's all black. So we could mix that 2D animation with a 3D body that was controlled just by the code. The code was moving the bones. So then we did this mix. And as we use these plain colors, you don't see very much the attachment of the head with the body. And this allows us to do basically whatever we wanted to do with the eel. OK, well, I will talk a bit about the design and the reference we had for this game. First of all, one of the biggest constraints we had when designing this game is that we decided not to have death. And I don't know if you ever design a game with no death, but it's really difficult. First of all, because it's the most common way to punish the player. So whenever the player does something wrong, that's the easy way. Or, for example, in our case, we also have like a lot of beautiful concepts. So, well, first of all, I would like to tell you this is pretty much some of the most references with a game we had, like Journey, you know, you can see the style, you can see that We like a lot how Journey showed for the first time to the world that games can be art, and we want to be part of that. Limbo, Ori, beautiful platformers, really well done. So for us, these were our inspirations. And during the game, what we did is having like a common structure of the platform, so you have abilities. But for us, the abilities shows a bit the growth of the girl, so how she grown up. So basically, she gains these abilities to know how to deal with the problems in her world. That's how we represent the grown up, the maturity of the girl. So as I was saying, not having that was a bit of a pain in the ass, because sometimes we had levels like this. So the artist came with things like that, and it's beautiful, we love it, but then we say, well, what happened if you fell down? So it happens like 20 times during the development of the game. What happened if we fell down? So we start to have to come with a lot of ideas of how to deal with this. So in this case, for example, we did that. So the idea is always trying to make the rest of the stuff disappear and just trying to make some traps or some contraption that will bring you up to the position. The good thing is that 90% of the people don't fail, so you won't see it. But you have to do it in case you fail. That happens as well in the last level. So here in this level, we know that the light is making the geometry appear. So that happens, that's a mechanic of the game. So we use that to control the falling. So when we were designing the levels, we always started first with the puzzles. We knew which mechanics we were going to have in each level. So the designers start creating a lot of individual puzzles. And then we do like a first pass of just arranging them to know exactly how the tutorial of the puzzle is going to be, how the player is going to learn how to use it. And we always do a first prototype, like a very rough prototype in Unity. It's beautiful, eh? But you need to do that. You need to do something very quick so you can iterate really fast. So we gave this to basically everybody in the studio, and as I said, like most of the people never play video games, and we wanted to balance it out quite well. We wanted most of the people to be able to play it, even if they struggle 2, 3, 4 times with one puzzle. Like pretty much everybody should be able to play it. Once we have that, we went again to the level designer, and we create a first pass of the level. And of course, our level designer never did video games, so he used to work as an architect, so he used AutoCAD to do the levels. And once we have that and we approve it, we give it to the art team. The art team did a first pass of how it was going to look finally in the game. And then when we have approved absolutely everything, the art team start creating the assets. So you create the assets. We have a lot of assets because we didn't want the game to be very recognizable, you know, the repetition of the assets. So we have quite a lot of assets. And once we have all the assets, we integrate it in the game with all the effects, the shaders, etc. Finally, I would like to talk a bit about the music. I think for us was one of the most important areas as well with the art, because we don't have text, we don't have dialogue. So all the emotions, we wanted to show it basically with the art and with the music. The music is a big part, particularly because it's a really good way to show emotions, even that sometimes in video games you don't realize how important it is. When you are developing a game, you will see that the first time you play something, and if you put music on top of it, it changed completely. We were very lucky because we met Berlinist. Berlinist is a band from Barcelona, and they never make video games, of course, but one of the composers is really, really into video games. So he was like crazy when we asked him if they wanted to make a video game. So they worked with us from the very first day, and that was really helpful because it helped us a lot iterating with a lot of levels, with some of the parts of the game, and some of them even changed because of them. The reference that they had when they were developing the music was mostly Ico, Shadow of Colossus, a lot, and of course Another World. And one of the inspirations for them when creating the music, and it's not very easy to see, is the idea of synesthesia. So Marco, the composer of the band, he thought that it would be a great idea when he was composing the soundtrack for each level, use this conception of the synesthesia. Synesthesia basically is the link between two different senses. Like, for example, a taste could be linked to a color, or in our case, a sound could be also linked to a color. So when he was developing the soundtrack for the red level, he was checking like which notes are most commonly related to the red color. So he used that for the soundtrack. Finally, as I was saying, the music is very important when you are doing a scene. So for us, one of the most important scenes when we did the prototype, it was unlocking a color. Unlocking a color is very important because you're going to do it like 5 times in the game. And it's basically the most important part. It's like when you are moving to a next stage. So when we were developing that scene, to be honest, I thought it was going to be impossible to make it look good. But the first time I tried with the music, it blew my mind. It was like, wow, this really looks really nice. So I'm going to show you how it looks, the blue color. Another scene that changed a lot, it was the Sandstorm. For us, it was going to be just like a normal gameplay. You have a sandstorm, you have to hide, and then something else happens, like more important. But when the violinists came up with the music, we thought it was super powerful, so we wanted to do slightly something more with it. So we finally actually changed a bit even the symbolism of the scene, and now it's a much more important scene for us. It's one of my favorites, to be honest. And I will show you now how it looks with the music. And finally, I would like to show you how we also use the music to show a bit the progression on the game. We have obviously the colors. The colors is the first and most important thing. But we also use this to show the progress during the whole game. So you are unlocking color, but at the same time, the music is evolving. So at the beginning of the game, you have the girl. You have a scene with the girl singing on top of a hand. So we repeat that several times when we unlock a color. So what we did is we used the music to show that at the beginning, when you have just the red color, there's just a few instruments. And every time you unlock a new color, the music is also evolving. It has more instruments, it's much bigger. So this is, for example, we will just hear it, but this is the first hand. So it's the basic melody of the main theme of the game. It's the same music that you hear at the beginning, but we just did with the basic stuff. Second time you unlock a color is the green color, and then you have a slightly more complicated melody, but the same thing. So you can hear there's more string instruments, there's more things. And finally, what you already saw the blue color, finally I will show you the yellow color. The yellow color is basically almost the last one, so you have everything. It has the percussion, it has all the bell and whistles. Well, now that you know a bit more about the game, finally I will show you the last trailer that we had for the game, so you might recognize some of the things that I explained today. Well, that's pretty much for today. Well, I just gonna say that I think it's at a discount today, so if you want, you can buy it. And that's pretty much it. If you have any questions, please feel free. There is a mic around, so you can just call for it and grab it. Any question? There's one there, I think.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm just wondering, for the really large characters in your game, how are you doing like sprite sheets? Is it some special technology or is it just standard Unity?
Well, so for the largest characters, for example, the bird has a really big sprite. So we use Atlas, basically. We use two technologies. We use the main Unity Atlas technology and another one. Sprite, how's it called? Texture packer. Yeah. But we use texture packer in some of them because we wanted to process the final atlas. So, for example, for the biggest ones, this is a bit technical, but for the biggest ones, we wanted to use another compression because if we use a normal DXT5 with color, it was gonna take too big in the memory. So, being just black and white, basically, what we did is changing not using the alpha channel, so using one of the colors for the alpha channel, and we use it like a black and white texture. So that was what we did for the biggest texture. But in general, what we did was we created all the assets and everything usually with a really high resolution, and then we exported usually divided by 4. And then we play the game and we start spotting like, okay, maybe this character is not too big in the resolution, and then we start like doubling until we go to the highest. But most of the time, usually with half of the resolution we created was enough. And in some of the places we wanted to give more importance to, for example, the Colossus with the hand. We gave a lot of resolution to that. But yeah, that's basically how we deal with it.
Okay, thanks.
No problem. Anything else? I think no. I don't see anything.
Maybe I can just say the question to you and you can repeat it.
Yeah. Yeah.
For the environment assets, were they made in 3D or just pure 2D?
Okay, so she's asking if for the environment assets we use 3D of any kind or if it's just 2D. So it is all 2D, all of it. We didn't render any 3D and then draw over it. We kind of did for the trees. We have some trees that are disappearing. And one of the animations that we used at the beginning was these trees turning. And that we did it in 3D first just to know exactly how the perspective will look. But finally, we remove it. So basically, I think right now we don't have absolutely anything based in a 3D. It's everything 2D, hand-drawn. The good thing is that our artists, they never work in video games, so they basically didn't know 3D. So they were mostly just graphical designers and artists. So they were more used to do right away 2D than 3D. So yeah. Yeah, there's a couple there.
Hey, I have a question. So as you said, they have the majority of the team was never worked in games or not for the game industry. How did you reach out to them and found them, especially like the architects, like as level designers?
Well, It was hard. The art part was very easy because we have Conrad Rosette. So in Spain, he's pretty well known. So basically, everybody that worked in art, he wanted to work with us. That was very nice. But for the other parts, it was much harder. Luckily for us, for example, Roger and another partner and me, we have quite a lot of experience in AAA games. So some people, especially young people, would like to try to get some experience with people that work in video games before. So what we did for the design, we just post some advert, I don't remember where, and we got like maybe 20, 25 applications, but most of the people that we got is junior people. Because you're a small company, we cannot afford much neither, so that's what you get. And we did tests for a lot of them. We prepared a test, Roy and I, just more or less what we could do, like, okay, classical things, like if you have to go here and go there and you have this mechanic, what you could do in the middle. And funny thing is that with the guy that we met, he answered really late to the advert, really, really late. Like, we already pretty much got one. Luckily for us, we haven't told the guy yet that we were going to hire him. So we received this guy application, and we were like blown away, like, wow, this guy is good. And he never worked in video games, but he was really good. So that's how we got him. He was working actually in another city, so we helped him to come to Barcelona to work with us. But in general, I think we were a bit lucky. So yeah. Yep. There's one there. One question there.
Sorry, where? Ah, right.
Hey, if you have to change something like in the game, will you or?
That's actually a question that I was talking yesterday with Victor from my friend Pedro. And I asked him the same question, and I answered also. To be honest, I think obviously there's always small things that you see in your game. But after working 3 years, and if I think in the whole process, it's like maybe there is small details, but I wouldn't change much, because at the end of the day, we honestly did our best. We worked our asses off. And to be honest, we came in a very well, I would say, balanced thing of the three founders. So the three founders, we obviously have our ideas. Sometimes you might lose some of the things, some battles. But in general, I'm pretty happy with the whole game. I mean, basically, after working 3 years on it, I still play a couple of times more, and I watch YouTube and Twitch, so I'm not tired of it. And that's weird, because when you work in a game for 3 years, usually you don't want to see it in a while. So I'm pretty happy. I'm pretty happy with it. Obviously, there's small things, but in general, I wouldn't change much. No. That's it, I think. Oh, there's one more there. Yeah.
Hi. Sorry. So the game is great, and I love it. So I just have one question. Will there be coming an art book out?
Well, yes. It's happening. It's happening really soon. Really soon. I think it will be announced probably within this month, or yeah, something like that. So very soon you will have more news about GRIS. You will hear. We are not going to make a second game or anything like that. That's not going to happen. We think GRIS is what it is, and it shouldn't have any, not even a DLC or whatever. We released, I don't know if you know, but we released a bit of extra content in the game, but just so you could see some unused art or some of the music that we didn't end up using. But we won't do any kind of extra content or second version of the game, because it doesn't make sense for us in the story. But we will try to make out the best of it. So for example, a lot of people ask for the art book, and a lot of people ask to have it in other platforms. So we will try to do our best so everybody can access the game. That's it? I think so. Well, thank you very much.